Welcome to the Grow Strong Leaders podcast. I'm your host, Meredith Bell, and I interview business leaders who are committed to their own growth and the development of everyone on their team. If you enjoy my podcast, be sure to subscribe and rate it on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you for joining me today. I'm your host, Meredith Bell. And as always, I love bringing to you people who are focused on their own growth and development, and they're also dedicated to the development of the people around them. And today you're going to love my guest, who I'll tell you about in just a moment. But one reason I chose this podcast and Grow Strong Leaders is because it reinforces what my company is all about. We have products and books that help people connect more effectively with each other at work and at home, and you can learn more at growstrongleaders.com. Today, I am very excited to welcome as my guest, Ray Leonard Jr. Welcome, Ray.
Hey, thanks, Meredith. Thanks for having me on here.
Well, I'm so excited. And of course, before we get started, I must give a shout out to our mutual friend and colleague, Sejal Thacker, because she is responsible for us knowing each other, and she's just a phenomenal connector. So we both really appreciate her. Before we get started in our conversation, let me tell my audience about you, even though your name is probably very familiar to them. Ray Leonard Jr. will forever be remembered as appearing with his famous father, Hall of Fame boxer Sugar Ray Leonard, in the 1970s iconic 7-Up commercial, which captured the hearts of millions. And now today, Ray is a top motivational keynote speaker, a radio host, an actor, and an award-winning business executive. He is what I would have to call a serial entrepreneur because he has experience in starting and running multiple businesses. And he is the CEO of a new startup company called Ovationz, and that's Ovation with a Z, which is focused on matching virtual event planners with speakers who can serve their audiences. So Ray, let's start. Of course, we have to start with your growing up years and talk about what was it like to grow up with a famous father, and how did your father and mother's journey begin?
Whoa, that's a loaded one right there. You talked about my commercial in the 70s, and so I'm aging myself with that. But I was born to two teenage parents. My mother was 15, my father was 16. I was born in Palmer Park, Maryland. A little small town. It was like 14 of us to a 2-bedroom house. Then my father got picked to be in the 1976 Olympics and won the gold medal. And our lives kind of changed from there. They were not married at the time, but soon we built this whole organization, which was the Leonard family business, to make sure that we took advantage of the opportunities that were being presented, because he was my father was the darling of the Olympics. So he had the big smile and charismatic way about him. So, that's kind of what started out my life, and everything changed from being a little kid and with nothing to being a kid that everybody knew in the neighborhood and around the world, and traveling and being in front of cameras and TV. All of a sudden it was really nerve-wracking, and it was a lot going on, so a lot to adjust to, but it was a beautiful experience, and I wouldn't change it for the world. It was something that I thought was just my journey, so I thought maybe like that was something for everybody, but getting older and realizing that it was kind of a one-of-a-kind journey, it's really humbling to see nowadays.
I would love to know, and I bet my listeners would too, what are some of the key lessons for life that you took away from growing up with your dad and watching all the things that he experienced? You were experiencing some things yourself that I'm imagining now you're applying to your own life, family, and business. Talk about some of those.
one of the biggest, I mean, I guess a couple of the biggest things was communication and the thirst to always know better. My grandfather told me when I was young, when you know better, do better, and that's what my podcast is based upon, and that's everything in my life is based upon learning and maturing and trying to figure out how to be better every single day. And I think that's what my parents learned because they were so young, and we all learned together. So we're not that far apart. So one of the biggest things was to take the advice of a Muhammad Ali or a Nelson Mandela or the Queen of England. I mean, these are people that Sammy Davis Jr. These are people that I was around at that young, tender age, which is uh, unspeakable to even think about having that experience. But they were a wealth of knowledge, and people wanted to share the knowledge back then. So taking the information and figuring out what to do with it. So, a lot of people, we can talk about leadership or talk about hearing information and how, being smarter. But if you don't apply it, then it's not going to resonate with anybody. It's not going to change your life. So that's kind of one of the biggest things that I learned early on is take the information that you learn from people that have already been there and use it to leverage into your benefit to make life better, not just for yourself, but for your community.
Mm, that's great. And you were also involved in sports a lot, right? In high school and in college. You didn't pursue boxing, if I remember correctly. Talk about some of the sports that you participated in at both the high school and college level and what impact those have had in what you bring to the business world.
So that was the path that everybody thought I was going to be, follow in my father's footsteps. But it's tough to live in the shadow where your father's a 6-time world champion in 5 different weight divisions and an Olympic gold medalist. So boxing was something that I did. I was pretty good at it early on, but it hurt to get punched in the face. So I said, no, this is not for me. It's not my thing. I love the sport. There's got to be a better way. So my passion became team sports. I ran track and field and played football. I was a pretty good football player, and this was kind of like my Olympic gold medal. Is that I was the first person in my family ever to go to college. So I earned a football scholarship. I went to Ohio University. You see my football helmet back in the background. But I was a 2-sport athlete, so I was pretty good. I was in the states championship for track and field for her hurdles. I think I still have the record in Maryland for the fastest time in the 300-meter hurdles, and did pretty well. So I competed in college in the hurdles and in football, and kind of paved my own way. And the thing I loved about being in a team sport was that you were depending upon everybody else to be a part of your success. And sometimes the leadership of one individual can change the lives of everybody else. And I've learned that from that aspect of sports, it transfers over to business because you're, how you DYJ, what we say, do your job, and how you affect someone else can make a change in the whole organization, whether it's a football team, whether it's a business. It's a different type of leadership because you have to have trust and you have to have mentorship and you have to, believe that everybody else is going to be on that same mission. And once you're able to have that and have that direction, you're able to have success. So that was one of the biggest lessons I learned from football, especially because there's so many people and everybody. It's so many things that success is dependent upon so many other people and them doing their job the correct way and being motivated to have that full goal.
Mm-hmm. That's so cool. I'm thinking about the various businesses you started, and I would love for you to talk about a couple of them and then talk about how you have gotten the team in each case to really come together and work together for this common purpose, because you started some pretty interesting and diverse companies.
Yeah, so I thought I was going to be an NFL star in college, and that was kind of the dream. But I got sidetracked and distracted with other things, and then injuries happened, so it didn't work out the way I planned. I did have an opportunity to try out for the Arizona Cardinals, which is funny because when I got my sports management degree in 1996, that's when the movie Jerry Maguire came out. And I said, if Tom Cruise can do it, then I can do it too. I can show you the money. I can do the whole thing. So that was kind of my entree into business. I was, guess, so just young and naive and believed in myself so much that I said I could come straight out of college and start a business. It didn't hurt that my buddy at the time in Ohio was in basketball was a number 11 pick in the NBA draft. And he believed in me enough to think that, my brain and my skill set could do it, strictly out of college. And, started a company, built it up to 22, 20, 25 athletes at kind of the peak of what we're doing in all different sports, 15 employees. And I ended up selling the company by the time I was 26 years old. So I did pretty well there. But it was always the curiosity of business for me to figure out what was the next step. Because at 26, when you sell a company, you think you've made it. And my curiosity was the financial services company that bought my company. I was like, what are they doing that they have money to buy my company? So that's what I went into, financial services. I got my Series 7 66 license through Merrill Lynch, and went to the financial services business for about 7 or 8 years.
And then you've created more businesses since then, right?
Yes. And so after I got out of the financial services business, because it wasn't a passion of mine, I created a consulting company and called Launch Team Consulting. My partner, Dr. Joy Wright, we do training, leadership, DE&I, diversity training, mentorship training. And a lot of the contracts that we had were for the military and different corporate organizations. And that's kind of where I fell into speaking as a professional speaker as well, because I'd go out and train, and it was more so coaching to me. I would just, kind of, coaching organizations and coaching people on how to be better at what they were doing. And they asked me to come speak at the naval base when I was moved out to California. And so I'd had no idea, had no official training of how to be a professional speaker, but went down and just spoke from the heart, because my business partner was a Navy veteran. And so she said, what you say when you're coaching the kids, could help the sailors and these soldiers here. So I said, okay, I'll do it. Went down, spoke. They said, can you come back 2 weeks later and do it again? Okay. I went back, did it 2 weeks later. And then all of a sudden they said, here, will you travel over here, we'll pay you to do it. I said, okay, that sounds good to me. So that's kind of started my speaking career. Grew into my consulting business. So the sports management consulting, I've continued doing that for years. And now being a part of the venture studio, Nobody Studios, that we're building 100 companies in 5 years, and being the CEO of Ovationz, the new talent marketplace, is kind of the new passion that the pandemic led me into.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's such a perfect timing, because so many organizations have moved to having virtual events. It's so much more cost effective. And so this service you're providing is going to be great for matching them with speakers who would be a really good fit for their particular audiences. As you have built teams, you mentioned coaching youth, and I would love to go there for a few minutes, because I think you have accumulated such wonderful, I think, not just athletic skills, but coaching skills, knowledge about how life works. And I know you've been passionate about coaching young people. So talk a little bit about that. What are some of the key, I guess, beyond learning the mechanics of the sport they're playing in, what are some of the other important aspects around life that you are trying to help them absorb and learn?
So the biggest thing for me is always accountability. You have to be accountable to yourself. You have to be honest with yourself. You have to be honest with the people that are around you for you to be able to get better. Because if you're living in a land that you're always blaming somebody else and think that you're not accountable for what you're doing, what you need to learn, what you get better at, then there's always going to be a problem, because it's easier to blame somebody else than to take that personal accountability. That's one of the first things that I train the kids to say, you don't have to be the best athlete. You don't have to be the best person on the team, but you have to be accountable to get the best effort. I talk about controlling your eight, which is your attitude, your preparation, and your effort. And once that the pressure gets on your back, people react differently, and that shows your character. So the biggest thing is that, hey, I'm accountable to myself. I'm going to have a great character, and I'm going to know that every single morning when I get up and look in the mirror, I had a great attitude. I was prepared for what I had to come, and I gave my best effort. And once you do that, you'll never go home and have to have an issue with how you perform. And that's everything in life. That's what I teach my kids. That's what I teach the business people that I deal with. Is you have to first take that personal audit of yourself and say, okay, who am I? What am I going to be responsible for? And what can I accomplish and be held to accountability on the other side to somebody else. And once we do that, I think it's a much better situation to deal with people. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to have issues, okay to have deficiencies in certain areas, but you have to be accountable to know that you have those deficiencies and say, I want to fix them.
How do you model that for the young athletes that you work with, and also with people on the teams that you've worked with? How do you demonstrate that yourself?
So I get up all the time and I talk about some of the not failures, but some of the life lessons that I've learned and how I overcame them and how I got better at them. And when I tell one of these kids something, I have to be accountable to them to show that I'm moving in that same direction. You can't just say, do as I say, not as I do. So you have to model that behavior. And that's what I try to do every single day is, I show that I work in my community. I help others. I do things outside of my purview sometimes. And everything that I do is not just about, what can it do for me, but sometimes is what can I do for somebody else, and have that go-giver spirit to say, okay, if I can do something for somebody else and I'm honest about it and they see that repetition of it, because it's easy to post it on a social media and say, I did this was great. But to be consistent about what you do in life and how you're held accountable to other people and how you're held accountable to yourself is a tough task, for all of us. So that's kind of what I try to do, and that's what I aspire to do every single day. I get better every day because, like I said, that's what my grandfather told me. Be 1% better every single day.
Yeah, talk a little bit about his 4 words, because that really had a strong impact on you over these years. Know better, be better. What did that mean to you? Well, first of all, do you know what he meant by it? And then what does it mean to you personally? How do you apply that?
I didn't know what he meant at the time. I knew the energy of what he meant and what he was telling me, but I didn't really digest it until later on in life. And it was that you seek the knowledge and you seek to try to be a better person in everything that you do and be better at everything that you do. And, hold yourself accountable that, I learned yesterday and I'm going to be better today than I was yesterday. And always a constant progress in life of trying to figure out how to be the best version of you and understanding that you are enough. That was one of the biggest things, that I am enough. And all of my flaws, everything that I had that was an issue, that if I'm trying to perfect it or trying to make it better, then we're moving forward in life. And that's going to have an impact because my kids will get better, my community will get better, the people around me will get better because they see the progress of me trying to get better. And so he talked about insanity being doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So if you don't have that constant progression of trying to be better than you were the day before, then you're never making any progress. So I figured that out years later. That's what he actually meant to me. But it was eye-opening. And I mean, it had to be in my late 30s when I actually realized it, what he was actually saying to me. And he passed away 4 years ago. And I told him when we on his deathbed, I was like, I get it, Grandpa. I get it.
Mm. There's a couple different things you said there I'd like to go a little deeper with. One is this being 1% better every day. I'm curious, how do you go about evaluating at the end of the day? Let's say, was I 1% better today? What criteria do you use to reflect on and evaluate? Have I made progress today or not?
So that's a great question because I'm a big list guy. And I like to check things off as I go throughout the day because it shows that I've made progress. The Air Force, I think Admiral or Captain that talked about making your bed to be your first part of success every single day. It's on YouTube. I don't remember exactly what his name was, but that kind of stuck with me. It's like you want to start your day off with a success and be able to check off things that here I accomplished this already. And going throughout the day, there's going to be bad things. There's going to be good things throughout the day. So I use these cue cards at night. And so always write down the best parts of my day. And then I write down the worst parts of the day and the things I thought I could have done better. I take them into account and then I rip up all the bad things and take the positivity notes that I've had throughout the day and say, okay, here, this is your progress. This is what you did good today. So take that with you to bed. When you wake up in the morning, you want to build upon that, not upon the negative. The negative is going to happen, but you tear it up as you go every single day and you learn from it and move forward with it.
Oh, that's great. I love that because I think too often people get into just replaying the mistakes they made. And that's what keeps getting churned around in their heads and is staying with them. I like your approach so much that you're going to bed at night with those positives in mind and you're letting go of those negatives so they don't keep staying in your head, messing with your attitude and your sense of yourself.
Yeah, I mean, you can beat yourself up, and I'm a big advocate of mental health because I struggled as a young person, and even as I grew older, to be with being silent about um, being a man, a black man, and that I had to think that I had to talk in a certain way, or I couldn't expose my emotions or anything else. I had to be tough all the time. And that weighs on you until you figure out how to deal with it and understand that we all are flawed people. And once I learned and accept that, it was much easier for me to let things go as the day goes on. And the pandemic was a big um, eye opener, I think, to a lot of people of how to be with yourself, how to be alone with your thoughts and the mental stress and strain. And if you didn't find a way to release it and let it go, then we're seeing a lot of the issues that are happening now today with people that are struggling with mental health issues because you don't know how to communicate. You don't, aren't open to, being vulnerable. And this is a life. This is a roller coaster journey. And so once you know that, you're going to have your dips and you'll go up and down. To not have that expectation that everything is going to be perfect all the time. And I think it releases a big burden off of us to know that and to know that, I say the greatest thing about being present in the moment to tell your story is knowing that there's always more to write. So it's a constant journey. My book is still being written every single day, and I have the pen that controls where I go from here.
Oh, I like that metaphor. That's wonderful. You said something earlier that I want to also explore because you said you knew I am enough. And many people are plagued by imposter syndrome where they feel like, oh, I'm going to be found out. They have a deep sense of I'm not enough. What do you think, what would you attribute your sense of feeling enough to, and how do you sustain that over time?
I think the biggest thing is being comfortable in my own skin. And I think people for being comfortable in their own skin. We always love to look back and then look up, but we never just look forward and see where we're going and be comfortable where we are at that point in time. You can look at somebody and say, okay, I aspire to be them, but you don't have to be them because they were not that person when they started out. It was the growth period. And so we understand where that, as a child, we had to learn to walk, we had to learn to run. So there's always growth that we have to go through. So that's kind of my thinking. And the fact that we all have our individual fingerprint. That means that we need to celebrate our own path because there's no two fingerprints that are alike. So we were made here and we're here for a reason to have our own journey. So your journey is enough for who you are. This is your journey. This is not anybody else's life to live. This is your journey. So be comfortable in your journey and don't look at somebody else and say, I should be there. No, you're right where you need to be at this time. And if you want to progress and move to where you're going to be later on, then that's you follow what your path is. But you don't have to take somebody else's journey or what they've done and think that you're not enough because you haven't achieved that. Because a lot of it's material. I've seen so many people throughout my life that had all the material things and are the most miserable people in the world. And I've seen people that have nothing and that are the happiest people in the world because they're comfortable with where they are and who they are. So I think traveling, getting the most experience, seeing more cultures, understanding people, understanding struggles of everybody outside of just yourself helps you move forward.
Mm-hmm. And what I'm also hearing from you is there's such a danger in making comparisons of yourself to somebody else instead of just appreciating who you are at this moment. And I like that you really emphasize that. You were just talking about all your traveling and all the people you've met. I would love for you to share who are some of the most memorable leaders that you've admired or you do admire, whether they're living or dead at this point. And what is it about them that caused you to say, wow, that is somebody I really admire and respect?
Muhammad Ali was such a integral part of my life. He and my father had the same bodyguards. Jamal Anderson, who played for the Atlanta Falcons, as his dad, the guy named James Anderson, who has passed away. But there was so much of a connection between us and him, and for him to be such a braggadocious character that people saw, but of such a principled man, but was a person that would give the shirt off his back for somebody in need. That was one of the people that really resonated with me for a large part of my life, I guess, because I spent a lot of time with him, and to see the growth and his understanding that he was such a big, powerful figure in the world, but he was also a person that was searching for being the best person that he could be through his religion, through how he functioned with his kids and family, to him trying to be a more educated person and how he functioned with his community. The guy was in the middle of the biggest prime of his life and took a principled stand to say, here, it's not about that, but it's about my principalities, and went to jail and lost everything that he had, but was still a principled person. That kind of stand was just resonated with me as a young person to say, okay, I can be him.
That's great. Thank you. Are there any other tips that you might want to share with my listeners who are looking to themselves grow as leaders? What are some leadership tips that you might share based on your own experience in the companies you've run, or as a father, or in any of the roles that you've had in your life?
Well, there's several. The one is no fear of failure. You can't progress and be totally scared of failing or learning up is what I like to call it, like learning up. Because if you take that life lesson and use it to make yourself better, then you're always going to be in a progressive situation and not make those same mistakes again. Being brutally honest with yourself and where you are and your limitations and what you can and cannot do. I think that is one of the biggest things, and I impart that to my staff. As I don't need to be the smartest person in the room, and these are some of the cliche things that you don't need to be the smartest person in the room, but you have to be able to share the vision and be able to be charismatic enough or to get people to believe in what you're doing, and always wanting to be better. I think that is a goal. It's once I've reached the pinnacle, whether if I'm a champion or not, I still want to be able to progress and be better. And I think if we're all open to that and we all want to communicate honestly and truthfully of how we feel, I think we will be in a much better place. Communication becomes a major issue because if you talk about, what happens in organizations, it's, a lot of it is it's fear-based, it's a lot of copycatism, and the failure to be able to communicate with other people, no matter where they come from and background. Because if I say one thing to you, you may hear it differently than somebody else. So I got to say, this is what we're thinking. How do you feel about that? What's your understanding of this? Your understanding may be different than what I said. So I think the communication and no fear of division is a big piece of it. And having that long-term goal and being fair to people. I think life is simple. It's about the yin yang balance. If you stay that course, you have the yin yang balance, you have the big vision, and you're able to share it and communicate it with others. I think we'll all be in a better place, from not just from business wise, but socially as well.
Mm-hmm. That's great. I just thought of another question I want to ask you real quick. You have 4 children, right?
Yes.
What would you wish for them as far as the one key thing you would want them to take into their own adult lives as a result of having lived in your home?
I think the biggest thing that is acceptance and love, and the thought process that we all are human beings, and to be treat each other like you want to be treated. And I think I try to instill that to them. My daughter is a graduate from Pepperdine University and had an academic scholarship, and she's doing her own thing in New York. And my oldest son is a second person out of our family to go to college, and he's playing football at Grambling State University. And my 2 youngest ones are, my youngest son is freshman in high school, and my youngest daughter is a volleyball star. So they're doing their own thing, and they're comfortable to come to us and communicate to us. And I think that has been the biggest thing. We show love to each other. We show brutal honesty sometimes, but at the end of the day, we want to see each one of us do as good as we can do, and be a champion for other people, not just think about yourself, but also be a champion for others. And I think, like I said, if you treat others like you want to be treated, I think it makes the whole world much, much simpler. And then how you go out into life a lot simpler.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Being a champion for others also being a champion for yourself. That's a theme that I've heard, throughout our conversation this afternoon. Ray, I just love what you shared. Thank you so much for the experiences you've had, the lessons you've learned, and your desire to keep growing, learning, and expanding. I think that's a key takeaway for all of us. I'm certainly inspired by what you're striving to do. And I love your practical application at night of reflecting on what you really had as good things and letting go of the ones that didn't go so well. For my audience who would love to connect with you, learn more about your offerings, including Ovationz, how can they connect with you and find out more about your services?
Yeah, so I try to keep it simple. So everywhere on social media is Ray Leonard Jr. At Ray Leonard Jr. Then my website is rayleonardjr.com. But then also the new company and adventure studios, nobodystudios.com, and Ovationz with a Z.com is the newest venture that we're launching really soon. Super excited about it. And then some of the nonprofit stuff that I do, I talk about my friend Brett Wilson, who has Walking Miracles. You check out his story; it's amazing. Like I said, I'm a champion for others. He's an amazing person. I'm on his board. And then my father's foundation, the Sugar Ray Leonard Foundation, we're doing our event this coming week. So, life is good, and I'm constantly looking to move forward. So everything is Ray Leonard Jr.
That's great. And I want to reinforce Brett Wilson's program, the Walking Miracles Family Foundation. I had a chance to speak with him recently, and that was quite an experience. We all have our challenges in life. His have been extraordinary. Ray, thank you so much for the positive contributions you make to the world and the impact you are having just by being such a remarkable person. Thank you for being with me today.
Well, thank you, Meredith, and I love what you're doing and all the energy that you've been giving to us. We totally appreciate it, and we'll see you on the other side.
Thanks for tuning into my podcast. Now head over to growstrongleaders.com and check out our 2 books, Connect with Your Team and Peer Coaching Made Simple. While you're there, download the free facilitator guide to find out how to implement our unique peer coaching system. Until next time, I'm Meredith Bell.